Yes, and I'm joined in studio now by Professor Emmanuel Navon, international relations expert and lecturer at the Tel Aviv University. Good evening, Professor Navon. Well, as we saw in the story, Professor Navon, Boutros Boutros-Ghali oversaw the UN in some of the world's most difficult and renowned crises. Can you tell us more about his legacy as a diplomat?
Well, first of all, he was very much involved in the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt and the visit of President Sadat in Israel in 1977. He was an international law professor. He came from a very prestigious family in Egypt. He himself was a Copt, an Egyptian Christian who married a Jew, and a prominent, as I said, a scholar and a diplomat. Now, when he became Secretary General of the UN in 1992, as you reminded us, it was during a very challenging period in the international system. He was, in fact, the first post-Cold War UN Secretary General. And he was very much criticized for the way he handled the many crises that happened under his watch, such as, of course, the genocide in Rwanda and the massacre in Srebrenica in the former Yugoslavia.
And Professor Navon, we know that in 1992 he submitted an agenda for peace, a suggestion for how the UN could respond to violent conflict. To what extent do we know how this influenced the UN's management of violent conflict since then?
Very little has been done. It's very hard to reform the United Nations because at the end of the day, it is an organization that is composed of over 180 countries with many different interests. So, of course, after the end of the Cold War, which was symbolized by the fact that the Soviet Union did not veto the American-led military intervention against Iraq, there was a hope that the UN would adopt to the New World Order. President Bush at the time, the first President Bush, talked at the time of a New World Order. And Boutros-Ghali really tried, especially for the 50th anniversary of the UN, to completely reform the United Nations. But really, at the end of the day, what brought about changes at the UN is when the US Congress threatened to stop paying its due to this organization.
He's certainly a remarkable diplomat, and thank you for telling us about him tonight.